dream big, and you can do anything you want to do. I started this at 50 years old, and I have big dreams for it still. So don't lose that.
Introducing the Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. Today we are talking all things money. So before you hit turn off, just remember that you have to pay attention to your money. It's super important to having a thriving life and having a thriving business, right? And if you've already gotten over these money mindset blocks and you embrace your money, you're going to love today's episode because you can always learn something new. So I'm very excited. I have two guests today on our lovely panel about women in finances. We have Pam Greb from the Seattle, Washington. She is I love this, recovering engineer who has transformed her career into a successful financial professional. So Pam, welcome. I like to say that I am a recovering lawyer, so I totally get you. Totally, we're on the same page. And we also have Dalene Higgins coming to us from Boise, Idaho today. And she is the CEO and a financial coach at Elevate Finances. She's also the host of the Wealthy After 40 podcast. So check out her podcast and tune in today. Ladies, welcome. So excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure
I have to say,
here.
yeah, it's so amazing. So we all just kind of met each other this morning because my podcast manager, Haley, connected us. So Dalene knows her. I think you work with her. And then Pam knows her because they're in the same neck of the woods. So it's such, it's one of the perks of doing a podcast. I just get to meet so many amazing women who I might not cross their path outside of this podcast. So I just want to thank you both for being here. And I want to thank all of our listeners because it's such a blessing to get to bring these amazing guests to you and have these conversations and just continuously bring valuable conversations that we need to have. And I don't know, ladies, I'd love to jump in. I want to hear each of your stories, but if we could start with, I only coach female entrepreneurs. And when I first was leaving the financial practice, obviously, most of my clients were couples when I did retirement planning, so totally different. I was in financial planning and a lawyer before that. So most of my friends were male because I was in male-dominated industries, right? And I didn't know that I would only work with women. But as I went along, I just realized that it was where my passion lied. And it's such a blessing to get to do the work I do and have the relationships I do with the women I work with. But one thing I can tell you is 8 out of 10 of my clients do not have a revenue goal when they come to me, and they are not comfortable talking about money, right? So do you experience that when you're dealing with women in your coaching and your planning practices?
I do mainly personal finances, but I've worked with entrepreneurs as well as those working for corporations. And the thing I find to go right along with that is a couple of them have been lower income earners because of things that have happened previously. And for both of the two I'm thinking off right off the top of my head, it was divorce. And usually divorce within 2 to 4 or 5 years, sometimes they're still stuck in the I can't make more money, I'm not worth more. And so that usually comes about as I am helping them put together a budget. So I always believe process is important to then start seeing these things develop. And within that, I'm like, no, what are you doing? You've got to reach for more. And the powerful transformations in that, and it sounds simple, and it kind of was in the process, but it's key to have it come about in a more organic way than a forced way.
Yeah, I agree. And Pam, I want to hear from you. But when I was doing retirement planning and financial planning, my first meeting, we started with what were their values, what were their dreams, and what did their future look like. And what it did was help them. Again, it was a couple there. It opened them both up to talk about money because it was an easy way to go. And by the end of the meeting, when I was like, oh, yeah, I need your tax return and statements to prep for the next meeting, they just handed it right over. Like there was no second thought because we were having the conversation on a deeper level. So, but yeah, psychologically for so many people, it's a challenge if you just go in there and start talking about money. So, Pam, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, so in my firm, I work with small business owners. So we're not necessarily talking about their financial personal lives.
Yep.
However, that absolutely comes into play because the first questions that I need to understand about my clients are, what are your dreams? What are your goals? Your business is just a mechanism to get you the life that you want. And so we need to understand what does that life look like so that we can structure your business in a way that you're gaining the things that you want out of it. So, our business is certainly based on trust. So it does take some time to build that rapport with them, to get them to open up, right? Because it's scary talking about finances. And, it can be embarrassing when a client comes to me and is in distress over their finances. They're not making a profit. They're afraid to lose their business. And so building that trust is super important. And I find that asking them some of those personal questions and getting to know them really, really makes it that much easier to dive in and to really be able to help them in the end.
Yeah, I love it. And just to set the stage here for our conversation, Pam, with most of your clients, you operate as their fractional CFO, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So, I act as their guide, their advisor, right? They know their business better than I will, but I can look at the bigger picture of their business from a financial perspective and ask the questions, be curious, right? So that they can then come to decide what are the next actions I need to take based on what Pam's telling me are the issues.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the rise of fractional C-suite, especially fractional CFOs, because most businesses could not afford a CFO, right? And so it gives them that valuable guidance, like you said, that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I love that this has come up really like I would say in the last 4 years. I don't know. I mean, was it much before that?
I'm seeing it more and more in all at different areas, not just in finance. There's fractional CMOs, chief marketing officers. There's fractional chief operating officers. I mean, the reason I started my business in the first place was because I was passionate about helping small business owners succeed. They're really the entities. They're the ones that need the most help because they're more resource strapped, right? As you're getting your business going, and so. You're right. Most small businesses, under $5 million aren't necessarily hiring a full-time CFO to help them in their business. So they need a guide, they need some help. And so by having a fractional CFO come in part-time, right? So a specific smaller number of hours a week, I can spread myself over multiple clients to be able to help more. Yeah. And so that's really fulfilling for me too. So
I love that. And also, we see so many professionals that start a business, but they don't know how to be a business owner, right? I know that was me as a financial advisor, because I started out with my own firm and I had a business coach come in, thank goodness, and teach me how to actually run a business, right? I had strategic partners to teach me that. But, as a financial advisor, I had so many clients that were doctors, lawyers, and they had no idea how to run their business. So, not that you're telling them fully in the business, but to have the guidance on the financial is so important, because a lot of times they're really good at what they do, but they haven't been taught how to handle the financial part or how to run the business, right? And I think it's just an invaluable resource for business owners. So I love that. And then Dalene, when we're chatting with you, to clarify, you are a financial coach, so not a financial advisor, not telling them how to invest, but share with us a little bit more how you interact with your clients.
Yeah, so I find myself in a couple of different arenas, but the first one and the most important one is helping people learn how to budget. I recently have had 2-3 clients come to me. Literally, they have nest eggs, they've grown enough, they know they're going to be fine in retirement, but they're like, I don't know how to budget, I don't know how to manage my money, and I need that help to, to be able to ensure and really kind of like give them surety that things are going to be okay. My one client, she's like, I am spending so much and I just don't know what it is. And I know I have enough, but I don't want to outspend. And so working with her, the focus was all about, spending and getting in. So I do an exercise, which is just a values exercise, but brought her right down to realizing that, and I believe this, spending is neither good nor bad. We have to spend our money. So getting in that place where you realize I am choosing to spend my money the way I want it to support me. So again, yes, just like both of you talked about, your dreams, your wishes, your goals, that's what I build the spending on. What do you hope to get from this? And segueing that into retirement, and then other clients, they're okay with what they've got going on, but still they don't have a full understanding. And once we put it in I have a very simple money management system that I teach and flow through and explain, this is how it is. They can keep track of it easier. They are not spending time. In businesses, you have to keep track of every little thing. Personal, it can be a little more, open than that and help you be supported. If you're somebody that wants to get in the details, you can, but it's created such a system to make it very simple, 5 minutes a day and you're done and you know exactly where you stand every single point of your personal finances. And I believe this is important for entrepreneurs as well, because how much do they need from their businesses? It's like, yeah, I have this desire, but sometimes we think we need more if we don't have that understanding of our personal finances. And sometimes getting that grasp on it can lessen our stress and our demand on ourselves to make more. I mean, we always want to be making more, but in the beginning, right? Okay, if I could just have this much, I know I would be okay. And then propel from there. And so taking it in steps. I think sometimes we get so caught up in money that we want to assure step 3, 4, and 5, and we're not even doing step 1 and 2. I get clients coming to me and they're like, am I going to have enough saved for retirement? Well, are you saving? No. Okay, save. But where does it need to go? It doesn't matter. Save for right now. Let's step 1. Don't overthink it, And so just trying to simplify. And I know I make it sound so simple, but I think that's important. I think that's important for people who are not into numbers. I worked my last 15 of my 32 years in government, last 15, I helped cops learn how to budget. Nice. These men know their jobs backwards and forwards, and most of them, there was a small percentage, most of them abhorred the numbers, and they're like, it doesn't make sense, and so really making it simple for them, and then varying that. I worked with 22 different individuals in creating a $60 million budget and having them understand their piece of the puzzle and the overall. So I really think simple is the best.
Yeah, I agree. I love a couple of things you said. Really, there are small hinges that swing big doors. Like, I'm a big fan of understanding where you're spending your money and making a choice. I had, as a business coach and consultant, I had a client come to me and then I realized she was very traumatized about money, to the point I was like, well, how much have you made so far this year? She came to me in fourth quarter and she's like, I have no idea. And I was like, no, that's not okay. One, I need you to go find those numbers. She said, I refuse to look at my bank account because she had had a past incident where she was so traumatized. I said, okay, forget about how much you've made this year. Between now and next week, I want you to open up your bank account every morning and look at it. Like, that was the first step. 12 weeks later, she had doubled the revenue in her business from the first 3 quarters. And the first step was just like opening the bank account every morning and looking at it, right? So I love that. And talking about step 1, 2, 3, throwing it back to you, Pam, I know you're a huge fan of goal setting, and I'm sure you guide your clients in that. And, that's a challenge with goal setting too, because they're like, almost get frozen. What do I do next? And goal setting, I personally like to reverse engineer. Let's go out further because it's easier to imagine, and let's go backwards. But talk to us. How do you work with your clients when it comes to goal setting, or what do you think is super important, Pam?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with many of my clients, the first step is actually having them look at their numbers.
Yes,
because if they don't know where they are, right, how are they going to even know if they can get to a goal, right? Yeah. So critical part of my relationship with my clients is you have to know your numbers. I know your craft is XYZ and you're an expert at XYZ, but you are also the owner of a business. And so if you don't know your numbers and you aren't tracking the important ones that will help us move from here to there, that's where we have to start. Right. So just getting them familiar with that, they do have to go and look at their numbers. Yeah. And, they freeze up. Many of them just freeze up. They're like, it's confusing. I don't know. I can look at a profit and loss statement and I can understand what that means. But what is a balance sheet? What is a cash flow statement? Most of them don't even look at their balance sheet and their cash flow statements, let alone understand them. Right. Yeah. And so, and I don't need them to be accountants, certainly, but I need them to understand the flow of money. Yeah. And that the profit and loss isn't a full picture of the health of their business. And so getting them to understand that outside of your profit and loss, there are still things, there are still areas that you owe money to, taxes, for one, right? Maybe you want to pay yourself, number 2, right? So all of the things that go on the balance sheet play into that. And so getting them to understand that the most important thing we have to look at is your cash flow, right? And that's going to drive every decision that we make. And then we can start talking about, where do you want to be? What are the goals? Because I can't start advising you until I know where you want to be, what your goals are. A lot of times that starts with, how much do you want to make? How much do you want to pay yourself out of your business? Let's start there, right? Because my goal personally is to help my clients pay themselves more. Yes. Most small business owners are making, under $100,000 a year.
I know.
Right? That's pretty hard to live off of, especially in certain areas of the country, right?
And also it's a lot of hard work for not enough pay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Their effective hourly rate ends up being way lower than minimum wage. If you look at how hard they're working, right?
Yeah.
And so
I love that because it ties back to what Dalene was talking about, right? Because I always tell, I have clients that come to me and they're not even paying themselves. And I'm like, no, we need to pay you. Like, what do we want? Because and the reason I'm so passionate about it is, I started my financial business after I got divorced and I was left with $10,000 in my bank account, right? And I started a business and I self-funded. I basically did some marketing, made some money, fed it back in, did some marketing, made some money, fed it back in, and built. But I remember the day I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm putting myself on salary. And I just felt like the peace when I knew, I think it was like, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 a month to start. But I was like, oh, so I have that coming in. That's okay. I can manage my household based on this, right? Versus trying to move all these levers in the business and home. And I think it's so important for a business owner. I just talked to a friend of mine and she wasn't paying herself and she has employees. I said, please do me a favor. I don't care if it's $500, but you go on the payroll. Like when they get paid, you get paid something, and we can build it up over time. And that goes back to what Dalene said. You have to know what you need. What do your personal finances look like? Because in my opinion, and it sounds like you agree with this, Pam, or I'd love to hear your viewpoint, that should be a line item expense. Like what you're paying yourself should be an expense of the business. So if the business needs to make more money so you can pay yourself, that directly feeds into your goals. And we should not feel guilty about it. Very quickly, a funny story is my best friend. She I coach her as well, and she gets extra coaching because she's my best friend, right? But she came to me when she was starting her business. And she was like, "Oh, I'd just be happy if I made $60,000 a year." Which, look, nothing wrong with that. Great. And her husband was covering the household. And I was like, "Don't do it." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I was like, "It's way too much work what you're going to do to not make six figures." And I was like, either have a goal to make six figures or don't do it. Keep doing what you're doing and enjoy being a mom. And she goes, "That's exactly what my husband told me." And so, of course, her first year, because we raised that mindset for her, she did six figures of revenue the very first year. But had she gone in with, "I'm okay if I make 60, guess what? She would have made 60, right? So I know as a coach, you probably work with mindset, Dalene, but how do each of you work with your clients in this mindset and like kind of raising that bar? Like it's okay to want more, or really you deserve to make more.
Yeah, so my client he'd been post-divorce. I mainly work with women, but I have had a few men I've worked with who really have been ideal clients for me. But yeah, he came and he found himself in a situation. It was a repeat situation. And so as we were working through it, it's a test that Brad Klontz has developed, kind of figuring out these money stories. And so he's got 4 different types that he is aligned out. And neither, it's not like 1 is good or 2 is bad or anything like that. But as I did this with my client, he had 2 he was identifying with, and the 2 themselves were opposing. And I'm like, okay, so, next session I get with him and I'm like, okay, tell me, as we talk through this type, what do you believe? What do you think? And we'd already, had a relationship going. And then I'm like, okay, tell me about this other one. He was dealing with 2 different expectations in his mind, his that he desired and his dad's that had been impressed on him over the years. And I'm like, neither one is right or wrong, and I'm not going to tell you which one to choose, but you've got to figure out which one you're going to honor, or you're not going to make any progress, And so as we identified that, as he realized that, and, I kind of did coach him through, a little bit of career and stuff. He's like, okay, I'm going to go look for another job. And he actually applied for a job while we were working together, and it didn't work out, but I almost got there and I know I can. And it's just, breaking these walls down that literally was because he was fighting 2 different expectations. So really getting clear on some of those things, is just, there's a few skills, few exercises that I have that do that. But otherwise, sometimes I just have to start asking. Another client, she was afraid of putting her money somewhere else and not just having it sit in her bank account, which she had a lot of money and she was a very low income earner. But I'm like, what is the problem? And we discovered, like, in her teens, her parents, that their family home caught on fire and they lost everything. So she has this fear of losing everything. Her parents were also entrepreneurs who had struggles and losing stuff through businesses there. And so I'm like, okay, you've got to get out of that, and working through that shift of, the fear of losing everything. What could she do to protect her, to increase her safety feelings, and so those things like that. So.
I love it. I love it. And Pam, do you work with mindset? I'm certain you do with your clients. I know you're a fractional CFO, but I'm sure mindset comes up all the time.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because the primary entrepreneurs that I work with, can be solopreneurs or growing with 1 or 2 employees. So it's, maybe $350,000, $400,000 in revenue up to, $5 million where they've got 30 employees that they're working with. And, one of my clients, was in the trades industry. And, you know, in that industry, it's really hard to find workers that want to work, that stay, that show up for their jobs. And so a lot of that is, when I'm looking at it from a numbers perspective, right? And the issue is you have to have X number of hours billed out every week. But if your people don't show up, you lose $1,000 a day. So what's going on with the people, right? And so sometimes it's understanding the mindset of your employees to figure out, well, what's important to them, right? And what can you do as a leader to figure that out? Maybe they don't want to work 5 days a week. What if you change their structure to 4 days a week and pay them what they want, what they need? Maybe money isn't the incentive for them. Giving them a bonus to show up to work doesn't help. And so, I think helping business owners, a lot of it is psychology, right? Let's be honest. Like, it's all about the psychology of running a business, of working with people. And so helping them kind of see outside of, right? Certainly. And most business owners get that, I think, understanding that it's more than just them when they have a team. But yeah, I mean, I kind of look at this as, my clients are also, I get to know them as people, right? Yeah. And so understanding what's going on in their worlds, right, helps me understand what their mindset is and how can I help shift that, right, from a guidance perspective. So probably comes up less as it does with Dalene, because you're working with, the personal lives, their individual lives. I have to get to that sometimes, but it's not always the first conversation.
I love it. So let's turn to y'all. I'm super curious. Dalene, we'll start with you. How did you end up being a money coach? How does one become a finance coach?
Well, somebody finds herself retiring at the age of 50, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm not ready to sit all day, and I am a reader, and I love to read a lot, but I'm like, but I can't. Like, I need to find something. And so I started exploring like what I love. And so, reading was one. I thought about going into the schools and volunteering, because really it wasn't about money per se that I needed. It was just, purpose. And so I started exploring, but then I realized if I went to the schools, they'd want me at a certain hour. And did I really want to go back to that? I'm leaving that, So that was why being an entrepreneur was very appealing. And I came across the financial coach, and I'm like, I just reached my big goal of being able to retire, at that age. And why can't I just turn around and help other people realize their dreams and their goals? And so then that's how I led to it. I found it in January. I retired at the end of May of 2022, and June 1 of 2022, I started my business. So yeah, it's been great. It was, and all the entrepreneurs, I think you'll kind of realize, but I worked in government. I worked for law enforcement for 32 years. We didn't do marketing. We didn't do any of that. I mean, there was, because like the jobs were handled by HR. That was probably where marketing was done. And so that's been my biggest piece of the puzzle, is like, how do you market? Where do you market? How do you sell yourself? That type of thing. Because, law enforcement, people just come to you. People call, hey, you need to find this person, And so it's different. And so that was my biggest hurdle. Because earlier on, while I was working, I did a side business of doing taxes as well, and the IRS really is like, employment, you're going to take a loss for up to 3 years. We're not going to question it. After that, hopefully you're going to be profitable. So I'm like, it's going to be 3 years. So knowing that, I think that has helped me know that it's going to take a while, take some traction, because I've met other entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm giving it 1 year. And I'm like, what can you accomplish in 1 year? I mean, yes, you can do a lot, but it's going to take some time. So I think I had an advantage there, even though like marketing, I had to learn from ground zero. So
yeah, I love it. Awesome. And Pam, how about you? So how did you go from engineering to being a fractional CFO?
I wonder that some days myself, yes. So it's been kind of an up and down and over and around journey for my career. So started, of course, as a mechanical engineer out of college, working for government agencies on top secret projects, doing research and development. Sounds really cool and all, but a couple years in, I realized I'm not sure I want to be sitting behind a desk working with a bunch of, let's face it, engineering is full of men, right? And in even in the government space, in engineering is probably even more, right? And so, we're talking, this is back in 1993, right? So I decided that I wanted to move out of the actual design engineering world, but my path took me, I think every choice, every decision that I made kind of stepped into the next role. So I went to work for a software development company that was for mechanical engineers. So I wasn't doing the design work, but I had to know the software and teach others how to do it. That also got me in front of clients. So I found that I really enjoyed being client facing, and teaching and training was what I was doing, right? Teaching our resellers how to use the product, our customers how to use it, how to train on it. Anyhow, fast forward, that job took me from the East Coast, where I grew up in Maine, to the Midwest, where I lived in Detroit. So I opened up our Midwest office as a technical manager, and then took me to Seattle. I moved to Seattle sight unseen. And then I decided, okay, I don't want to travel anymore, because I was doing a lot of traveling in different territories. I was getting married. I really just want to kind of have a home base. And so I took a position as a director of systems engineering at a data backup company. So totally different. I wasn't a systems engineer, but I can learn I know how to manage things, right? So had a team of 10 people for the Northwest region. They were sales engineers, customer engineers. Then I had kids. And like many of us Gen Xers, if we have the opportunity, I took the opportunity to stay home with my kids. And so I was home for 8 years. Nice. I took a gap in my growing, my financial path to raise my kids. So I was home for about seven or 8 years. Fortunately, even the best laid plans don't go as planned. And I ended up going through a divorce and realized it's time to put your big girl pants on and go back to work. And so I did. I kind of took a part-time job first to get myself back into it, but a lot changes in technology in 8 years. Like even opening Outlook, like where are the buttons? Everything has changed. The whole interface is different. So teaching myself how to do that again. And I got into account management. So I was working for a SaaS company that did travel expense and invoice software. I did that for 7 years. I worked on a global accounts team. Anyhow, all of this leading up to, I got tired of corporate America. Got to the point where I was now working at an IT research and advisory firm. I was selling IP to the biggest tech firms in the world. And although it was a great company, it just didn't fill my bucket. It was kind of soul sucking. I got to the point where I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. I've turned 50 years old. We're at the peak of COVID. So what am I doing? Am I doing it for the money? Is that why? Well, that wasn't a good enough reason anymore. And so I talked to my financial advisor and I said, I'm thinking about doing a thing. And that thing is taking a year off. So I took a year off. I spent time with my kids while they were still in high school, getting ready to go to college. Nice. During that time, of course, I'm not just sitting around because I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm taking classes, I'm learning things, I'm learning about the stock market, I'm doing some day trading, I'm getting into blockchain technology and crypto. It was all exciting and it was like great and all. But I knew that wasn't my career that I was going to go to. Kind of a side note, 6 months after I resigned from corporate America, my mom tragically passed away. And I was so thankful that I didn't have a 9-to-5 job, right? I was so thankful that I was home. So I believe everything happens for a reason. So I was able to go back to my hometown in Maine, 6 or 7 times during the course of that year and to help my dad and get things in order. And I bring that up for a reason because it ties you back to why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. After a year off and the money tree was drying up, like Dalene, I was exploring entrepreneurial type things. And I should also say, like, while I was a stay-at-home mom, I also had a side hustle. So I had my own job in network marketing, building a team, teaching people about healthy products. And that was just my side hustle to like get out of the house, right? Yeah. And so I really, when I think back about that, I'm like, I really loved building something. I loved being an entrepreneur. And so as I started exploring different entrepreneurial opportunities, there's so many out there, right? Like which one is going to fit? And I knew I wanted to take all of these skills that I had learned over the years in all of these different capacities and put them to use. And like I said earlier, what better way to help and to help small business owners who are trying to just survive. And so I came across bookkeeping and I thought, oh, this could be something, right? So I kept it in the back of my mind, started looking more into it. I'm like, all right, I think I can do this. And so got my training. I'm an engineer. I'll figure out how to do anything, right? So I learned on my own accounting. I learned on my own how to run a business. Actually, I took some training for that. And people would ask me, why did you get into this? Why the change? It's pretty different from what you were doing. And I was like, well, I'm an engineer. I love to solve problems. I love to put things together. I love numbers. Yep. And as I thought back about it, when I was young, my mom was actually the bookkeeper for a small business across the street from my house for 17 years. Yeah. And I used to go into the office and I would help her. I would be matching invoices to purchase orders and stuffing envelopes. And I was like, I was doing AR and AP before I knew what it was. And so I do feel like I kind of got brought into that. Like, I feel like there was a reason. So I started my business very quickly I'm sorry, this is a long story, but I'm getting to the point, I promise. As I was working with business owners, I realized they need more than just someone to record their income and their expenses. Mm-hmm. These business owners need more help. They need to understand their finances better. And I can see the picture, right? I understand it, right? And so I decided to get more training and get certified as a CFO for small businesses so that I could take all those skills and use it more effectively. And that's when I added CFO services to my business.
I like it. Thank you for sharing that evolution, both of you. So what's interesting is I know you had a different track going through your divorce, staying home, etc. And, that's the point. We've all had a journey. I mean, I started my financial practice after, I was living in Italy. My husband was Italian. I came home. I literally owned nothing. And I was like, what do you do now? Right. And it's so funny. I did multi-level marketing to begin with, too, because I was like, I just want to engage with people. But I knew, I was traumatized because my husband had addiction problems. So I needed to heal myself. And I was like, I don't think I could commit to a law job. Like, I just take work too serious, right? And I didn't think I could. And then that led to a series of other things, which had me start my business. So we all have our journey, and it's so interesting. And I love pointing this out. And Dalene, I have a client just like you. She's ready to walk away from her job, early 50s, just had her first grandbaby. And she's like, I'm going to be so freaking bored. I have to find something to do. And so she's literally like brainstorming everything, from photography to real estate. Like, what do I want to do next? And I'm just sharing this and tying our stories together for anyone listening, because a lot of times that inner critic is our worst enemy. And there are plenty of us that have lost our way and said, okay, what's next? Because we're driven individuals and we're like, we want to make a difference. We want to bring purpose. And so thank you, both of you, for sharing your stories, because it's so important for us to remember that sometimes, I don't know, I'm curious how y'all felt before you decided what you're doing, but sometimes we almost need that period of feeling a little lost so that we can discover ourselves and what's important to us, right? So then when you are on it, it's like, yes, this is it. I feel good.
Yeah. Just having that quiet time to reflect, self-reflect on what are your values, what's important to you, and trying to find something that aligns with that.
Yep. And Pam, I want to ask you, because Dalene shared that marketing was kind of her biggest hurdle when she became an entrepreneur. What did you find as your biggest obstacle? Or I also like to ask, maybe what surprised you? Because, what I hear from a lot of my clients is I didn't know how lonely it would be to be an entrepreneur. That's why we have the Vixen Founders Collective. And I always encourage women, find a group, right? But I guess what surprised you, or what was your biggest challenge as you were onboarding or currently?
Yeah, great question. Marketing is my nemesis, I will say. So when I first started my business, it was word of mouth referrals. So I told my CPA, told friends. I got my first few clients super easy. I was like, this is a piece of cake. I better start hiring people, because as soon as the word gets out, we're going to need 3 or 4 people to help. And so I hired my first contractor to help me, but I didn't do any marketing. And so I knew that there's networking groups out there. So I did join networking group and started growing my business that way. But I really haven't done any marketing. One, oh gosh, just thinking about it, right? Just like my clients don't like finance, I don't like marketing, right? I know I can do it. I know I need to do it. I need to figure it out, or I need to hire someone to do it. But that was probably kind of the biggest hurdle. And also, you know, they talk about the riches are in the niches or niches. I didn't know what I wanted to niche in or if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer. I love a challenge. So I liked working, and I still do like working with different
people.
types of businesses and learning about it and different types of people. And so I haven't niched down, so to speak. I find, here's my niche. I like to work with nice people.
Yes, that's a great niche.
Who I get
I'm
to
with
work
you.
with.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you bring up two important things. So one, I feel marketing and sales in general becomes easier when you find a way that aligns with who you are, because that's what I work with my clients. Because, you know, I mean, I successfully marketed and scaled a company to multiple seven figures. And then when you change industries, it's like, oh, I got to figure this out again, right? And so, you know, you have to learn again. So everyone faces this. But I just got so tired of, oh, steal the way I do it or do it this way. And so the way I coach my clients is I walk them through the strategy of what they should be doing, and we do it collectively as a group, but no one's telling you what to do with your business. I mean, look at all of us. We've lived a life. By this point of life, we women know what we like and we know what we don't like, right? So I just want to share, like, you know, if something in marketing or sales or any part of your business doesn't feel good to you, like, that's okay. Like, find a different way to do it, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. Dalene, I have a quick question for you, and then I'm going to bring us home because, as always, we could talk for hours. It's fascinating. So I'd love to hear from you, going from government into entrepreneurship. What was, and, you know, be it corporate, be whatever the switch is, but what was the nicest, we talked about a kind of surprise that maybe you didn't expect. What was a surprise of entrepreneurship that you found to be a gift? Like, what do you enjoy most about it?
You know, and when you were just speaking about finding what works, you know, that marketing, I tried everything. And really recently, just as of September, working with a business coach as well, I just do my podcast. Like, social media is like very minimal because I just didn't love it. And so, you know, it just getting into that. So I guess my gift really kind of going along with that, and which I've had to realize, is I do love to work just a few hours, 7 days a week. Like, my husband retired 3 years before myself, and we're empty nesters. We do our thing. He does retirement differently than I do, but I can work 3-4 hours every single day. And it's not this, I mean, other than the client sessions and that demand of time, but I've set that schedule. The gift of being able to ebb and flow the way I want, you know, let's go off to lunch, or, I don't have anything today and I don't need to do anything today. Like, I have really, really enjoyed that. I took the weekend off, this past weekend, which is very rare for me. My husband took advantage of it, and so we did a lot together. And then Monday, my daughter showed up, and so she wanted me to go with her. So that was day 3. Day 4, my husband needed me to get him to some doctor's appointments and stuff. And so I'm like, really, I mean, okay, working for somebody, you have to schedule that off, or you have to put in your time. And do you have time? And if that time is used at this point, can you use it for later? You know, that to me is probably the biggest thing, is just the time freedom more than anything. You know, it's just been huge. And I love that. I love that entrepreneurship. I did relate when you said, you know, you can feel lonely, but meeting people, connecting with some of the most amazing people out there, it's like, I have a go-to. And I don't know if they consider me a friend, but I consider them a friend. You know, it's like friends in this type of realm are so completely different. And so I love that gift as well.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I have my collective and, we all connect and my best friend's in that. And I love that my best friend's an entrepreneur now because I've known her since 2010 and she just became an entrepreneur in like 2021 or 22. I can't remember. And so I'm like, this is so cool. When we have drinks, we can actually like talk about she'll talk to me about her business and I'm like, I'm nerding out. I love this. We also talk about other things, but it's important. That's why I shared with you I was going to be in Boise. I'll be there for a mastermind. So, I lead groups, but I also join groups because you can't always be the coach and the facilitator. Sometimes you have, there's a beauty to just being in the audience and taking the reflectionary time for yourself. So I love that so much. So we are almost out of time. I want to, Pam, I'm going to ask you first, what did we not touch on that you would like to share with all the amazing people listening to us today?
Oh gosh, dream big. I think that we forget sometimes life is happening and we lose our dreams along the way because we're too busy being a mom or, running a business. But dream big and you can do anything you want to do. I started this at 50 years old and I have big dreams for it still. So don't lose that.
I love it. Thank you. And Dalene, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of tack onto that because I also love getting my clients to dream. And to me, dreams mean there's no boundaries, there's no parameters, there's nothing. Like you have just got to be like a child and dream it and then go and take action. And my newest motto as I've been working and niching down, I have niched down, Pam, but, make retirement possible. And retirement is not what you think it is. It's not working. It's not, you're done with that career. Like you can pivot, you can find something different. And if that's for you, make it happen.
Yeah, retirement is really your next purpose. It's just the next phase of life. I love that. Well, one, we all have in common the dream because I love to push people to dream and dream bigger. I have a client, she's like, you're such an expander for me. And I'm like, oh, good. That's like the best compliment you can give me. Thank you. So I love that. And then two, thank you for mentioning the niching because as Pam was doing that, I just want to share, I share this a lot when I'm coaching and on the podcast. Your first year, maybe 2 years of business, there's this big find a niche. You don't know who the heck you want to work with at the beginning. And a lot of times it's psychographic. So like you said, I want to work with nice people, right? Like I want to work with people who want to expand. And so you start niching down. And I've realized, as Dalene mentioned, most of my clients, they're adverse to social media. They don't love technology. Like they're not tech savvy online. And at this point in our life, like Dalene said, she just wants to work a couple hours a day. Like we're not going to be grinding it out till 2 or 3 in the morning building our business. And so we really just, based on these like collective things of our generation, and that's kind of what I focus on with my clients. So, I have everything, I have clients I have money coaches, I have luxury photographers, I have lawyers, but we all have those things in common. So I think you just find those common traits and you'll quickly learn who you don't want to work with. Let's put it that way. I know that in my financial practice. I think that's very important. Well, ladies, I want to honor your time. Thank you so much for being here today and diving into this conversation. I love that the three of us are used to talking about money because often that can be uncomfortable. So that was so cool. And for everyone listening, as I always say, the world needs a little more love. So I'm going to ask today, this week, love yourself. Love yourself by taking some time to dream. Think, what do I want in this next phase of my life? And it might be between now and the end of the year. It might be the next few years. It might be the next decade. It doesn't matter. But what do you want to dream and accomplish and do? So as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And you can find all of the information for our amazing guest in the show notes. And if you haven't subscribed, go to vixengathering.com/podcast and hit subscribe. And then we will deliver all of these amazing resources to your inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. So have a beautiful day. Don't forget to dream big. And ladies, thank you so much. much. All right, everyone, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Vixen Voice.